Hello, everybody, and welcome to First Impressions. In this series, we will be taking a look at the 9 new leaders that will be released with the upcoming expansion, Gathering Storm, on February 14th, to be exact. Now, many of you watching this have probably seen a number of other YouTubers who have gotten into these first impressions and analysis looks at these new civilizations as they're released. And I thought, you know what? I have my own perspective on them. I get asked a lot while I'm streaming on Twitch every day. What do you think of this guy? What do you think of this guy? You know, what do you think these guys are going to be super powerful? This civilization looks great. What do you think? Or I don't know if these guys are any good. What do you think? And I thought, you know what? I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel and the exposure that we have for Civilization 6 content in particular. And I thought, how about I make these videos, create links. People ask me, I say, boom, go take a look. Remember to like the video while you're there, blah, 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 and more exposure. So here we go. The information will be bestowed upon you as such. Now, before we do get started, I do want to point out that while I will be breaking these civilizations down from a general overall perspective and giving an overall view of how they're going to play, much of my analysis is actually going to be from a Deity AI perspective. That's my expertise. That's what I play every day. That's what people tune in to watch from my perspective. And so I want to make sure that that perspective does have a voice on YouTube in these channels, in these videos for the first impressions. So while I will be trying to give an overall view and kind of compare back and forth between a casual player versus someone who likes to play these super intense higher difficulty levels, that will be the focus in the end. So without further ado, with that all being said, let's get started with Matthias Corvinus. I hope I've said that right, of Hungary. A very dashing fellow indeed, and he has got some really, really strong abilities. Right out of the gate, they didn't waste any time with this first civilization, giving us what I think could possibly be something like a top 5 civ. Very, very strong. So, Raven King. This is a bit of a long one, so let's just get through it. Levied units gain an ability giving them +2 movement and +5 combat strength. If it costs no gold or resources to upgrade levied units, and if you levy troops from a city-state, you receive +2 envoys from that city-state. And finally, of course, you gain the Black Army unique unit when the castle's technology is researched. So, that's a lot. Let's unpack it. First of all, the levy units gain an ability of +2 movement and +5 combat strength. Wow, that is very strong. That is essentially the surprise war ability of Cyrus, where when they declare surprise war, the units all get +2 movement, +5 combat strength. You're getting the same thing here. Now, I don't know. They don't say anything specific. I'm not sure if it's going to be a 10-turn time limit like it is with Cyrus, or if it's going to last the whole 30 turns that you get with a levied army. But that is very, very powerful. Very interesting to see just how strong that is. It's going to be a lot of fun to play with. And, of course, not costing any gold or resources to upgrade levied units is also extremely advantageous. Saving all that gold is going to be massive. When you're going to be going, in particular, going for that big domination victory. So, and also being able to gain the 2 envoys for levying troops. So from this perspective, obviously, if you are trying to keep the suzerains of these city-states specifically so you can levy the armies and continue your domination run, that's one thing. But this ability is actually going to kind of coincide with the diplomatic favor required to work inside the Diplo Congress, the new Congress that's going to be coming out for the diplomatic victory type and all the stuff surrounding that, where you're going to need diplomatic favor. And for those of you who don't know, when you are suzerain of a city-state, you actually gain a per turn increase in your diplomatic favor earned. So being able to basically turn gold into envoys and suzerain up all of the other city-states by just saying, you know, you get one to get your first city-state to suzerain status, levy their army, start boosting them up, and then you won't have to give them any more of your envoys. So as you earn more envoys through the tech tree, then you can start to get another one going, and you could just start to stack these up. And every time you're getting close to needing, you're going to say lose control of a city-state that you're suzerain of, you can just go ahead and levy their army again, and then boom, more envoys are yours, and you've got control of them again. You continue to earn that diplomatic favor. So that could be really strong as well. Now, overall, Raven King, I would say it's a very, very good, unique ability. Next, Pearl of the Danube. Speaking of very good abilities, this one is quite possibly just a little bit broken. Now, for those of you curious, quick little history lesson. I'm not going to bore you, but the reason behind the Pearl of the Danube, some of you might be wondering, what is that? Why exactly are they giving this particular ability? A long time ago, before any of us were here, there were two cities, one called Buda and one called Pest. And they were on opposite sides of a river called the Danube. And these cities grew and grew and grew until their point where they were basically up against the edges of these rivers. And during the 19th century, they were starting to build more and more bridges to connect these two, and they basically became one big mecca, became a very popular place to go in the Eastern European area. This is a cultural and economic mecca that people went to. And after a while, they decided, hey, these have basically become one city. Let's just call them one city. And they decided to call it, you guessed it, Budapest. So the whole synergy of creating one big city that became so productive and so popular in that region was basically around connecting these cities across rivers. So, this is the way that they've kind of paid homage to that history with the Pearl of the Danube. So very interesting. And like I said, very, very powerful. I really don't know how else to say it. So just to break down the numbers, having 50% more production towards districts and buildings constructed across a river from the city center. Now, certainly there's some RNG factors to this. You're going to want to be on a certain kind of map, Pangea or continents, of course. You're going to want really, in particular, like windy rivers, so you can put your city center right in the right spot so you can get more districts around them. There are going to be consequences to building on those rivers with Gathering Storm, of course, because there's going to be the floodplains, and you could potentially get some of those rivers overflowing and destroying some of those districts a little bit and having to repair them. That would be a penalty cost you'd have to be willing to accept in order to take this advantage. And the other thing, too, is that oftentimes, particularly for like holy sites and campuses and stuff, a lot of the best adjacencies aren't around the river. So sometimes you're going to have to decide, do I want the really good adjacencies up in the mountains or near these jungles or whatever? Or do I want to take something down by the city, which isn't going to give me as much adjacency, but perhaps this incredible advantage in production is worth it. So it's going to be a kind of a decision you're going to have to make. Breaking down exactly what the numbers are, because some people have had a little confusion with this, and I just want to make sure that you see exactly how this is going to work. 50% production towards the districts means the production you are providing in your city will be increased by 50% when working on these districts or buildings that are across the river. So that means if, for instance, you have a city that's producing 20 production per turn, if you're working on any of these, you are now going to be producing 30 production per turn. And without getting too deep into the math, that essentially is what it's doing is making those districts and buildings 1/3 cheaper. So if, for instance, if you have a district that's going to cost 600 production, and if you were to do it at 20 production per turn, it's going to take you 30 turns. But if you have 30 production per turn, that 50% increase, then it's only going to take you 20 turns to do that 600 production. So as you can tell, instead of it taking you 30 turns worth of time, it's only going to take you 20 turns worth of time, which is 1/3 less. So this increase from 100% production to 150% production is a 1/3 increase in the overall total production as a percentage of the original production. So that extra 1/3 means the districts and buildings will be 1/3 cheaper. That is incredibly powerful. If it was just the districts that were 1/3 cheaper, it would still be like, wow, that's really powerful. But the fact that the buildings are also going to be 50% production increase or 1/3 cheaper, that is incredibly strong, particularly when you get towards the later buildings, universities, of course, but also like the research labs or the broadcast centers and all those two are particularly the most important ones. that is crazy, because those are super expensive in the late game, and to be able to cut a third of the cost off essentially, and make your cities that much more productive, and getting those shot out there to be able to get your science or your culture boosted that much quicker. That's crazy. That's crazy strong. So very interesting. Let's move on. The units, the Black Army and the Hussar, or I don't know, I probably said that all wrong. But anyway, the first one is a unique unit from the medieval era. They gain +3 combat strength for each adjacent levy unit. So this kind of coincides with a little bit of synergy with the Raven King, being able to levy those units if you get them all in the right spots, where you have, you've kind of strategically make sure you maneuver them and micromanage them so that you've got levied units in and around the area with your Black Army units. You can gain maybe +3, +6 combat strength, which could be, pretty solid strong if you can get them maneuvered properly and keep people alive and healthy and stuff. It's a bit of micromanagement, so it's, take from that what you will. And then the Hussar, +3 combat strength for every active alliance. So for Hungarian unique unit in the industrial era, which actually does promote from the Black Army, that's convenient. But I actually find that this one might actually not be particularly strong. I'm going to tell you why. It could be a little bit advantageous, in particular, if you're looking to just be a little bit aggressive to make yourself a little bit of room during a different kind of victory condition. But if you're going for a domination victory, how many alliances do you have? If you might be able to somehow hold on to one that you plan on breaking late, but generally speaking, everyone's going to hate you because you're a warmonger, and you're going to be taking them all out. So by the time you get to the point where you're in the industrial era and you've got your cavalry, are you really going to have an active alliance to give you that bonus? I don't know. Maybe you can manage it, but in an actual domination victory, I feel like this might actually be kind of a weak unit. Have to try and play him to be sure, but I'm not 100% sure. If it was stronger, I think that as an overall, the civilization might be too overpowering, but I'm kind of on the fence about these guys. Finally, the thermal bath. Building unique to Hungary, gives you +2 amenities and +2 production, which extends to each city within 6 tiles, which is handy. But remember that those bonuses do not carry over and multiply to more than once per city. So you can't build them in every city and have them overlap a whole bunch of cities and get it multiple times over and over again. The +2 production is okay, but the amenities is actually very valuable here. Particularly since it actually doubles to 2 more additional amenities if there is a geothermal fissure in the city's borders. Now, how often are you going to have a geothermal fissure within the city's borders? Probably not all that often. We haven't played the game to be sure, but we haven't seen a ton of them. During the online play that they've shown us during their live streams. But I mean, if you get 1 or 2 of those, it's a lot of amenities. It's a way to just boost those amenities. Particularly effective when you're going for science or culture victory. Those amenities are very powerful in keeping your cities happy or even ecstatic and giving you bonuses to your production, your culture, your science, and the faith, and all those kinds of things. So amenities is something that's often overlooked, and you shouldn't, because it's very powerful. So that is Matthias's abilities. Let's break it down and see what our overall impression is. So in a word, I'm going to say these guys are powerful. I think they're a top 5 civ. Maybe I think right now I slot them at number 5. I think they're very, very strong. They have a lot of well-rounded abilities, and because of that, in a number, I'm going to call them an 8. Borderline 9. Pearl of Danube. It's close. These guys are a borderline 9. That's a powerful 8. Let's call it. Now, if you're going for a science victory, this is how we break them down. We break each of the victory conditions down in a score out of 5. There's actually going to be a link down below to my overall breakdown of all civilizations currently in the game and how I rank them by all these things and stuff like that. So you can check that out as comparison. For science, I'm going to give them a 3 out of 5, as well as for culture. I think that they're a bit of a softer 3 than the culture is. The culture 3 out of 5 culture, 3 out of 5 science, but I think it's a much stronger overall for culture, because generally speaking, your theater squares are going to be a lot easier to place across the river and not give up adjacencies, whereas science districts, you're going to want to put them in the mountains. So a big part of the advantages that they have in these science and culture runs is the incredibly inexpensive districts and buildings that they're going to be able to build. So that's important to keep in mind. I think it's kind of a soft 3 for science and a really strong 3 for culture. Again, these are just first impressions. These could definitely change in the future, but I think that they're just a really overall powerful ability with that Pearl of Danube helping them in both the Science or a culture game. Now, from a military perspective, a strong 4 out of 5. Raven King, until I've tried it out, I don't want to give him a 5 out of 5 on this, but until I've tried out Raven King and some of the unique units, a 4 out of 5 I think is a safe bet. And finally, for a religious game, I give them a 2 here. Really, the only advantage that they do have, again, is from the Pearl of the Danube. I think that, you know, in a lot of cases, you're not going to want to put your holy site across the river because it might not be the best place to put it. If you have mountains or a big forest or something somewhere, you may not want to have to put it across just to make it cheaper. I believe that the number one most important thing, particularly from a deity perspective, as far as going for religious victory, is just how fast you can accumulate faith. And so giving up really good adjacency bonuses is not really well advised, even if it would make your districts a little bit cheaper, or a third cheaper in this case. So that's it. That's our very first impressions video of Matthias. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I'm really curious to see what you guys think of these guys. Do you think I'm overshooting it? Do you think I'm undershooting it? I'd be happy to hear what you think. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done it yet. You can check out our Game of the Week on a weekly basis. Love to have you come by and say hello to us on Twitch as well. And don't forget to like this video if you have enjoyed it. We'll see you next time, folks. Bye-bye.